Have you ever imagined dying for 11 minutes and coming back with a secret message from Jesus about the end of times? Have you heard about the 3 signs that precede the 3 days of darkness and that are being hidden from you? In today's video, you will learn the shocking story of Haley Brooks, an American teenager who had a near-death experience that changed everything. What she saw will leave you speechless, and it could be the warning you needed. So leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell because this story will touch your soul. And comment below which city you are watching from. I want to know how far this message will reach. My name is Haley Brooks. I'm 17 years old, from Birmingham, Alabama, and on April 3, 2025, I died. Not for long. It was exactly 11 minutes, according to doctors, but long enough to see what's coming and warn you before it's too late. It all happened on a normal spring morning. I was in the school locker room after volleyball practice. Suddenly, my heart just stopped. Sudden cardiac arrest, they said. I fell to the floor like a rag doll. The girls screamed. The coach tried to revive me. They called the paramedics. But while everyone there watched my body lie motionless on the cold floor, I was somewhere else, a place where time doesn't exist, and the truth is impossible to hide. In the beginning, there was only darkness. But it wasn't just any darkness, it was alive. It pulsed. It wrapped around me as if it were examining me, testing something inside me. And then, with a sound that seemed to rip the universe apart, I was pulled upward. It was like being sucked into myself, through layers of reality until I was standing in a field of light, which breathed. The ground shone like liquid glass, and the air had a sound. Yes, the air sang. It was as if the space had a melody of its own. And there, in front of me, someone was already waiting for me. He didn't need to introduce himself. I knew who he was. He wasn't the Jesus from the paintings. He was more real than anything I'd ever seen. His gaze pierced my soul and at the same time embraced me. He spoke without moving his lips, and every word he said exploded inside me as absolute truth. Haley, the time has come to see what is hidden. The world will be warned. 3 signs, 3 opportunities, then silence, and then darkness. At that moment, I understood that humanity is about to experience something much bigger than we imagined. It's not just a technological collapse. It's not a simple blackout. It's a direct cut in the noise that prevents us from hearing what really matters. And those who aren't prepared won't be able to handle it. Jesus took my hand, and that's when everything started to change. As soon as Jesus touched my hand, everything around me changed. The field of light disappeared like smoke, and suddenly, I was floating above planet Earth. But it wasn't like seeing from space. It was like being inside every place at once. I could feel the heart of the cities, the silent cries of the people, the weight that every soul carried. And then, he spoke. The first sign will come as a sound, but it will not just be heard, it will be felt. And in that instant, I heard it. No, we heard. A sound began to vibrate throughout the planet. It wasn't music, nor noise. It was as if the universe itself began to sing, something between a choir of angels and the crying of the earth. For exactly 7 minutes, everything lived to the rhythm of that sound. People stopped where they were. Cars stopped in the middle of the road. Children dropped their toys. Even animals fell silent. It was as if the world was being summoned to something sacred. I saw men falling to their knees in the middle of the street, women crying without understanding why, young people putting down their cell phones as if they suddenly felt ashamed of everything they had placed at the center of their lives. I saw couples hugging as if it were the last time, and I also saw others, those who covered their ears, those who screamed in fear, trying to silence what was not coming from outside, but from within. I saw people locking themselves in dark rooms, freaking out, because the sound was playing exactly where they didn't want to look, in their hearts. Jesus looked down with a sadness that cut through him. He said, "This sound is my spirit. It tears away the veils of pride and reveals what is hidden. Those who still have time will feel the urgency, but many will reject it." I saw arguments being interrupted, parents calling children they hadn't spoken to in years, enemies forgiving each other with tears. But I also saw people mocking, people saying it was a collective hallucination, people hiding behind drugs, at parties, in rage. The entire earth was crossed by a divine note, and each soul responded as best it could. And then, as it began, The sound ceased. A heavy silence fell, and Jesus looked at me, serious. That was the first warning, the gentlest, the most merciful. The others will shake the heavens. I couldn't speak. My spiritual body was shaking. And even without a physical mouth, I asked, "What next?" And he answered, "The sky will burn, and no one will be able to say they didn't see it." In the blink of an eye, the planet beneath my feet went out like a light bulb, and what appeared in its place was a starry sky, endless, and soon, completely transformed. It was like watching the universe open up with wounds of light, lines of gold, purple, red, and blue sliced across the sky like liquid flames. But these were no ordinary auroras. They were alive. They danced with intent, as if each beam held a secret message. Jesus said, "This is the second sign. The lights will be seen all over the world. For 3 nights, the sky will speak." As he spoke, I saw multitudes around the globe standing transfixed, staring up. In Alabama, where I grew up, entire families walked barefoot, silent, wide-eyed. In New York, traffic came to a standstill. In Africa, forgotten tribes gathered under the same sky. And even in the coldest, most closed-off nations, lights broke through the clouds like spears of fire. But what struck me the most were the reactions. Children pointed with shining eyes, as if they knew instinctively that this was sacred. Old people cried as if they had waited their whole lives for this moment. I saw entire families kneeling in the yard, praying, crying, hugging each other as if it were the end or a new beginning. But I also saw those who didn't want to see. I saw scientists giving hurried interviews on TV, trying to explain the phenomenon as solar radiation. I saw influencers laughing, saying it was CGI in the sky, a secret government project. I even saw churches closing their doors, afraid of what it meant. And as the heavens burned, Jesus spoke again, and his voice now shook with the weight of truth. On the third night, those who have spiritual eyes will see the armies move. The spiritual world will be visible for a brief moment. The angels will take their positions, and the demons too. I saw gigantic figures in the sky, but they were not ships. They were shapes, ancient, beings made of fire and light, some too beautiful to describe, others so horrible that it hurt just to look at them. The invisible war became visible, and humanity, for an instant, would be forced to face what it had always pretended did not exist. Jesus then turned to me and said in a firm voice, "After that, silence will come, and it will be the final test." And then the light in the sky went out like a curtain, and what came next was the most terrifying thing. The light disappeared suddenly, as if someone had ripped the fabric of the sky, and then the strangest thing happened. It wasn't just silence, it was total absence of sound. No noise, no electrical hum, no vibration. It was as if the air itself had died. Jesus held me steady. We were above a big city, maybe Houston, maybe Atlanta, but now it looked like a corpse. The lights went out. The traffic lights blinked one last time before giving way. All the engines stopped. Cars stopped in the middle of the street. People came out of buildings with dead cell phones in their hands, trying in vain to turn something back on. The planes stopped in the sky. The stores went dark. The whole world had shut down at the same time. "This is the third sign," Jesus said, "the hour of silence." He made me hear beyond the stillness, behind the absence of machines. Only the sounds the Creator had made remained. The rustling of the wind, the crash of the waves against the rocks, the singing of the birds, the sound of each person's own heart. It was as if the earth had returned to its original state, before the factories, before the engines, before the distraction. People began to look each other in the eye for the first time in years. I saw neighbors gathering, confused but present, children sitting on their grandparents' laps, listening to old stories, couples rediscovering the sound of their own breathing, families praying in circles. It was as if time had stopped, and God said, "Now listen to me." But not everyone listened. I saw despair on many faces, people screaming in silence, punching equipment, trying to force technology to work. I saw teenagers panicking because they couldn't access social media. I saw men trying to restart generators, women knocking on store doors. The absence of noise revealed an unhealthy dependency. And then Jesus said, "Humanity has become addicted to distraction. Now, you have only 1 hour to choose, prepare or get lost." Then he showed me something that chilled me to the core. A vast spiritual clock hovered over the world. Tick, tock. The minutes ticked away like cosmic sand. When the last grain fell, darkness would begin. Not an ordinary night, but a divine separation. And with a voice that seemed to shake the heavens, he declared, "Those who prepare their spirit will have peace, but those who mock the signs will wish they had listened." Then I looked down, and I saw the inner lights of thousands of homes lighting up with prayers, candles, confessions, but I also saw others descending into chaos, violence, and despair. Time was running out. The last grain of the spiritual clock fell. I saw it vanish like smoke between the fingers of time. And then, without any warning, without a thunderclap, without an eclipse, darkness fell. But it was not a simple night. It was not the ordinary sunset we know. It was a veil, a being, a consciousness. It was a darkness that saw you. It didn't just cover the earth. It penetrated windows, crept under doors, seeped into the cracks of the human soul, and anything that wasn't lit by candles or faith was swallowed up. Jesus looked at me, serious as ever, and said, "For 3 days the earth will be tested. There will be no light except the inner light. There will be no connection except with the High One." I saw homes prepared for the day, where people sat in silence or prayer, families gathered together, candles lit, hands held, tears flowing, children sleeping in their mother's arms while fathers recited hastily memorized verses. A strange, unearthly peace filled these places. It was as if heaven itself were there, within the humble walls. But outside, it was a nightmare. I saw cities collapsing, supermarkets overrun, people fighting for matches, for food, for hope. I saw men going mad, screaming at the sky, blaming God. I saw shadows, moving in the darkness. They had eyes and teeth and hunger for fear. Jesus said to me, "These beings have always been here, hidden by human distractions. But now, everything that is not light is visible." I saw young people who laughed at the signs being overcome by terror. I saw people begging for a minute of light, turning on cell phones that didn't work. The horror wasn't outside, it was inside. The darkness revealed who each person really was, but I also saw miracles. I saw people being freed from addictions with a simple prayer. I saw enemies forgiving each other in tears. I saw children prophesying out loud. I saw people seeing angels for the first time, and understanding that faith was not an invention, it was a weapon. Jesus shook my hand and said, "They have 3 days to remember what it's like to be human, what it's like to be a son, what it's like to be mine." And then something caught my attention. One place in particular, a small house on fire, but not with ordinary fire. It was burning from the inside out, with a light that didn't burn. Inside, a grandmother was on her knees praying with such pure power that her entire house seemed untouchable. "She is not afraid," said Jesus. "She knows my voice." And I understood. Those who truly knew Jesus weren't trying to survive. They were helping others endure. And then he told me something that still resonates with me. The darkness did not come to destroy, it came to separate. The darkness was advancing like a spring tide, and I could see from above, as if the planet were divided into 2 great maps, those who had light within, and those who were only afraid. Jesus took me to see ordinary, humble homes, but where the candles burned brighter than usual. "This flame," he said, "is not made of wax, it is made of repentance." I saw faces lit with tears, not of panic, but of release. I saw parents asking their children for forgiveness for years of absence. I saw wives revealing secrets they had hidden out of shame. I saw siblings embracing each other after decades of silence. It was as if darkness pressed down on their hearts, and what came out was truth. But on the other side, entire neighborhoods were in chaos. I saw people trying to break down the doors of prepared neighbors, not for food, but out of desperation. I saw people trying to turn on televisions with lighters, as if they refused to accept the silence. And most frighteningly, I saw shadows gathering on street corners, whispering lies into the ears of those who were vulnerable. Jesus said to me, "At this time, each soul reveals its true owner." The shadows did not attack with force. They approached softly, offering shortcuts. I saw a desperate man grab a flashlight, which turned on by itself, but with a red light. When he used it, his house filled with invisible screams. It was as if By accepting that false light, he had made a pact. Jesus just muttered, "Not all light comes from me." But then I saw something glorious. Families singing in the dark, children holding paper crosses, young people reading the Bible aloud by the light of a single candle, and something amazing. I saw some houses where a golden mist hung over the roofs. It was like a shield. Jesus revealed to me, "These prepared their hearts before the signs came. Therefore they are not afraid. They are under my promise." In those 3 days the whole world was judged without judgment, tested without courts. It was a separation that no government could organize, no church could control. It was personal, intimate, spiritual, and Jesus said with deep pain, "This is the final chance. After this, many will no longer have time to return." I asked myself, what happens when the darkness ends? Jesus looked into my eyes and answered, "Those who remain standing will have seen the invisible, and they will never be the same again." 3 days, 3 nights. Not a second of electric light, not a notification, not a siren, just prayers, tears, or screams. When the last moment of darkness passed, I felt it. It was as if the earth exhaled, like someone who had held their breath for too long. A gentle wind began to blow, not ordinary wind, but a warm breeze that seemed to say, "He finished." And then, the first ray of sunlight broke through, but it was different. It wasn't the same sun I'd always seen on Earth. This one was the color of liquid gold. It didn't hurt the eyes. It warmed you from the inside. And when it touched the rooftops, people slowly emerged from their homes, as if they'd emerged from an emotional basement. Jesus said to me, "They are being reborn. Those who listened, those who prayed, those who endured, will now flourish." I saw immediate changes. Couples renewing their wedding vows on the balcony, children running into their parents' arms. Churches that had become cold opened their doors again, but this time, without fear, without formulas, only faith. I also saw those who came out of the darkness, worse, bitter, violent, angry at God for having lost control. Their homes were intact, but their spirits completely broken. Jesus then showed me a division. It wasn't physical, it was spiritual. The world that existed before died in darkness. He said, "Now a new one is born," and each soul chose, during the silence, which kingdom it belongs to. I saw entire streets transform into communities. I saw neighborhoods coming together to help each other, people growing food, sharing water, gathering around the word. But I also saw areas where ego continued to rule. There, people's eyes were dimmed, as if they were only alive on the outside. Jesus pointed to one of these areas and said, "They saw the signs, but they chose to ignore them." It wasn't a lack of warning, it was a choice. That's when I realized, the 3 days of darkness were not a punishment. They were a birth. Painful, yes. Terrifying, yes. But with a purpose. Stop the whole world to ask a question that no one else was asking. What if everything you call life was just a distraction? Jesus looked at me and said, "The greatest miracle is not surviving the darkness. It is awakening from blindness." And it was at that moment that I began to understand that my mission was not just to tell what I saw, but to awaken those who still sleep. Jesus looked at me with a tenderness that almost broke my insides. His eyes held something I had never seen before, trust, as if he saw me whole, with my fears, doubts, mistakes, and yet, he believed in me. "Haley, now you see, now you know. And that's why you need to come back." I despaired. The thought of leaving that presence, that peace that surpassed all human description, was like being torn from one's true home. I fell on my knees before him, saying, "Please, let me stay. I don't want that world anymore." And Jesus responded with words that burned my soul. "It is precisely because you have seen what is coming that you need to warn. Many still have a chance. Many will listen. If you speak." He showed me people, faces I had never seen before, but that my heart recognized. A boy in a baseball cap walking alone down a highway, a lady praying alone in a trailer, a young woman with cuts on her arms sitting in a dark bathroom. And he said, "These will listen to you, because you know what they feel, and now you also know what I feel." Then I saw the planet as a giant heart, with arteries of light and darkness pulsating at the same time. And Jesus pointed to a small, fragile, but bright point. You are a spark, and it only takes a spark to light a fire. At that moment, I understood that my story was not just mine. It was an echo of so many others, a piece of a collective call that God was making across the earth, an invisible army of survivors of the darkness, returning with messages that the world needs to hear. Jesus reached down and placed his hand on my chest, and I felt something enter me, like a flame, but it didn't burn. It was as if he had planted within my heart the urgency of 1,000 prophets, the cry of all the heavens. And then he said, "Don't speak to convince, speak to awaken." I hugged him, not with my arms, but with my soul, and I asked, with a choked voice, "What if no one believes me?" He smiled, a smile that would cross 1,000 storms. Some will laugh, others will mock, but just one person who listens is enough, because that one person will change everything. And then, without me being able to prepare myself, I was sucked back in, like thunder in reverse, like falling into a hole of light, like being sewn back into your body. The feeling of returning was the opposite of peace. It was like entering a space too small for the soul, a weight, a pain, a prison. I heard voices, alarms, machines. Everything was so noisy, so aggressive after having been in the silence of God. I opened my eyes and found myself in a hospital room. The lights were cold. The air smelled of plastic and fear. My mother was there, holding my hand, crying as if she would never stop. Nurses were rushing around, doctors whispering words like miracle and impossible. One of them, eyes wide, said, "I'm going to die." She was dead. 11 minutes without a pulse. She shouldn't have come back. And if she did, not like this. But there I was. No after effects. No flaws. As if nothing had happened. Except it had all happened. I didn't speak for days. How could I explain? What words could describe what I saw? The living darkness, the 3 signs, the eyes of Jesus, the sound that tore through the sky, the light that danced like heavenly fire, the spiritual clock that ticked without stopping. At first, I tried to ignore it, go back to school, pretend to be normal, but something inside me screamed. Every time I saw someone staring at their phone while ignoring the world around them, my heart ached. Every time I heard a fight over small things, or a young person saying that nothing matters, I was reminded of what's coming. I began to write everything down. Every night I dreamed of the signs, and even stranger, I began to hear the sound. In moments of deep silence, it would return, that heavenly echo, as if the sky were calling me again. And then I started talking, first to my family, then at church, and then someone posted a video. Suddenly, thousands of people started listening to me. Some said it was crazy, others cried. People from other states sent messages saying they felt the same way, that they had dreamed of the sound, of the sky on fire, of the moment when everything stops. And I understood. My return was the beginning of the mission. I'm not alive just to move forward. I'm alive to warn, to prepare, to remind the world that the signs will come, and that the only thing more terrifying than darkness is entering it without the light inside. Since I came back, my life has never been the same. Everything that used to be a priority, grades, social media, looks, approval, has become dust. I'm still a teenager. I still like music. I still laugh with my friends. But now, every beat of my heart carries a reminder. You saw, you know, prepare them. One night, weeks after my recovery, I went to sleep with the feeling that something was still not finished. In the middle of the night, I was awakened not by a dream, but by a presence, not in the room, inside me. The same voice that had guided me on the other side spoke once more. Last warning, Haley. I was taken again, not with my body, but with my consciousness, to a high place, where I saw the world as I had seen it the first time. But now, something had changed. The sound was beginning to form. It was as if the first chords of that celestial sound were rehearsing, preparing the planet for the final moment. A tremor in the air, subtle but real. And then I heard, when the sound comes, they will have 7 minutes. When the lights dance, they will have 3 nights. When silence falls, they will have 1 hour. After that, everything changes. The warning echoed like a sacred countdown. Jesus didn't show up this time, but I felt his presence, like a burning coal in my chest. like the heart of God burning for his children, an urgency that consumed me alive. Speak boldly, even if they laugh, even if they persecute. You were not called to please. You were called to awaken. I returned to my body with tears in my eyes, but without fear, because now I knew I am not the only one. Others are returning too. Others are dreaming. Others are hearing the sound even before it begins. The signs will come. The sky has already begun to move, and when it all happens, there will be no excuse to say we didn't know. If you are listening to my story, know this. This is not just a warning. It's a chance. Prepare your soul. Ask for forgiveness. Reconcile yourself, because what is coming is not fiction. It is living prophecy. And I died to tell you this. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.